This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It's so easy to get caught up in our bubbles, isn't it? Right? We all talking about what we about to do in the draft and who we got to add, bring back. Then we kind of peek over what other teams are doing. But here I want to get a more complete picture of the AFC North. And today we're talking about the Bengals. And in order to do that, I bring on my guy, Ace Boogie. Ace, how's everything going down there in Cincinnati? Is T. Higgins, does he have that deal yet? Is he extended yet?
Nah, I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think that it's going to get done this season. I think this will be a typical kind of Bengals situation where they just basically play this scenario out. However, the draft does make it interesting because this is a draft class loaded with players, and apparently now they are taking calls on T. Higgins. So I would probably say it's like 70-30 he's staying. The only other way something happens is if he gets traded, but I think it's pretty much 70-30 right now. But yeah, I don't think the contract is coming, dog. I was thinking that they would do it, but I think they're actually shifting focus to Jamar Chase.
So do you think this is we'll let him play on the tag, maybe double tag him type? Like, do you think they're looking at this as we could have T for the next 2 years type of a situation? Or what do you think is worth it compensation wise for them to move off of that plan?
I think they'd have to get at least something in the ballpark of a first round pick and maybe even, a mid to late with that for them to move off of it. I think the fact that the money has gone up as it has, especially you look at the Calvin Ridley deal, you look at some of these deals that are out there where the money has increased, it's actually cheaper for them to tag him twice. So it is a scenario where I could see them doing that. But I do think, in fairness to T, that they would do like a tag and trade similar to what we saw with the Chiefs this season with L'Jarius Sneed. I think they would do that the next season because I don't think they will want to ruin kind of the relationship or make it that sour, making him play on the Bengals another season. But the reason that this has a big crux in it is T obviously battled injuries last year, had a down season. And so a lot of teams aren't willing to just part right away with that first round pick, even though I feel like he's worth it. But teams right now, if you were to sell him right now, the stock isn't high. Whereas if he comes back and he plays on that franchise tag and then performs next season, you're pretty much easily getting a first round pick for him with any kind of leverage that you had there. So the Bengals right now, in my opinion, have all the leverage because it's cheaper for them to do it. And like right now, it's not really to their benefit to trade T. Higgins away for lesser value.
Yeah, I tend to have a different view of this than I think most people in this area have of that whole situation, because I'm just like, this is a good situation for the Bengals. Like, they can nab somebody in the first round if they really wanted to have a solution. They could take somebody in the second round. Since they did not have a healthy Joe Burrow, they have earlier picks in both rounds. So right. You can get, a good wide receiver. We know that the Bengals have been able to develop wide. They got T. Higgins in the second round. It's like, okay, we can have T. Higgins play this year. Hopefully he balls out, gets a big return for T. Higgins with the franchise tag, and that will be an incentive for a team to pick him up because the franchise tag will basically lock him in at 24? Would it be about 24? So you lock him in at 24, and I remember talking about this with the Jerry Jeudy thing. It's like people don't know how expensive wide receivers have become over the last few years when they talk about these contracts, because people were losing their mind over Jerry Jeudy getting 17. I'm like, well, that's about the going rate for somebody who gets about 14 per reception, right? Sure. And T. Higgins probably going to get in the open market, if he hits like a truly open market, 28. I mean, Tyreek got 30, right? Yeah. And that was a couple of years ago. Wouldn't it be crazy if T had 30 if he had like 1,100 yards after this year? Especially if you're trying to project, what's he going to do when he gets the bulk of the targets and not Jamar Chase? So, yeah, and also teams aren't going to have the option of, oh, well, we can see if O'Dunn's is going to be there at 12, or we can see if Neighbors is going to be there, or you know, we're going to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, this is a generational wide receiver class, especially at the top. So I just think the number of bidders got cut off right at the top for the Bengals. But this is still a good situation because there's enough depth in this wide receiver class for them to get somebody. He doesn't have to play right away. You could put him in developmental mode, maybe have him run some routes. Like, it doesn't really matter. You got enough at wide receiver. And then, you know, hey, if you do have to move off T. Higgins, you can replace that with somebody or move up. Like, maybe you move up. What's the kid from Princeton y'all got last year?
Andre Yacivas,
Yacivas, and then kind of work with that. And then you also got Joe Burrow. And I believe Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, that's enough. Like, you know, so I think they're in a good situation because either they're going to keep T. Higgins, which would be a positive, or they'll trade T. Higgins somewhere down the line for significant draft compensation. And I think that's a win-win for the Bengals, especially when we talk about if you get draft compensation for T. Higgins. I think that's actually best case scenario because then you get to have another wide receiver on a rookie deal, and that's how you keep, you know, 3 wide receivers around Joe Burrow when he's paid $270, right? Is you got to have some extra resources. So I think that's a good situation for Cincinnati. I know some people are trying to use that as like the Bengals' death knell. I don't think that's going to be it. Now, the defense, right? I think me and you have been in agreement about this the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The most underrated thing about the Cincinnati Bengals is that defense. And the thing that I think people who kind of stat watch or scoreboard watch or just kind of like keep up with the casually, they know Joe Burrow, they hear about Jamar Chase, but you know, you got to be kind of deep in the weeds to know about Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Cheeto, right? Like, but Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, but these were the guys who were really pivotal to those 2 conference championship runs that the Bengals have had. Last year, I think the biggest problem that the Bengals had was that defensively, they weren't consistent. There were some games where they looked like that old Bengals defense. They were able to get it together. And there were some games where you're like, ooh, man, their safeties don't know where they need to be at. Their corners are getting cooked. Like, they can't contain. Like, all kind of things are just going wrong on the defensive side of the ball. And it's putting that extra pressure on the Bengals offense that hasn't been as consistent as I think people would assume, where it's like, oh, now you need to score every drive, but they get cold here. And then all of a sudden that, you know, 3-point gap turns into a 14-point gap. With what they've done defensively, do you think they're at a point to where this can be a Lou Anarumo defense that of old, or do you think that they're still kind of closer to what they were last year, but slightly better?
I think when it comes to the run defense, they are kind of like what they were last year. Maybe possibly, dare I say, worse. The reason that I say that is right now, as it stands, they still don't have a replacement for DJ Reader. DJ Reader allowed them to run the defense that Lou loves to run. He's pretty much the foundation of it because there's no way you should be able to line up in nickel and be able to stop the run that they were able to with DJ Reader. DJ Reader allowed you to do that. Also, you talk about Geno Stone, which the research that I have done on him, not the greatest like guy against run defense and stuff like that. So, you know, is this going to be a team that isn't going to miss tackles next season? I think Von Bell makes you better, but you know, the rest of the pieces there are very questionable. I think if you ask any Bengals fan right now, their confidence of probably the run defense on a scale of 1 to 10 is probably a 2 because they don't have DJ Reader. So I think in that aspect, they have regressed, and I would be remiss to say that they haven't until we see what happens with that nose tackle position. In terms of the other pieces of the defense, I feel like the pass defense may have improved a little bit with bringing Von Bell back, a guy that knows Lou's system. The guys last year, they just didn't know the system whatsoever. They were young, they struggled, and it seems like even now, this staff has really kind of given up on Dax Hill, at least as a safety, in terms of that role, because it seems like they're moving him possibly into a nickel role, kind of similar to what we see with Kyle Hamilton. I expect that to be his role, but technically that's the Mike Hilton role. So it's kind of put them in a position to where the future, or what was deemed to be the future in that room, it didn't work. And it seems like they're pivoting. And then you grab a guy like Geno Stone, who's really good at getting interceptions and can learn from a guy like Von Bell. So I think on that stage, they've gotten better. However, the secondary, you kind of mentioned Cheeto. He kind of was the underrated number one corner. He was coming off of an injury last season. He wasn't the same Cheeto because he got beat a couple times. I know Cheeto might be watching. Sorry, Cheeto. I'm just telling the truth. But he got beat a few times. But they did have a kid in DJ Turner who kind of like a rookie had some really get big peaks and a couple lows, some pretty bad lows there to end the season. So I think that they do need another veteran presence. And from what I'm hearing, they're supposedly in the veteran cornerback market right now, looking at some guys, possibly a Xavier Howard, possibly Gilmore, someone like that. And I think that this team needs that because CTB and DJ Turner are your starters, and we're talking about two players that haven't even been in the league. I think this is CTB's third season, and really his first season was somewhat of a redshirt year because he started it hurt. So you got to bring more experience into that locker room just to teach these guys and help them. But I think that they're going to get back to that Lou defense, but I don't know if it's really 2021, 2022. 2022 may have even been better than 2021 in terms of that defense. And so I think I'm cautiously optimistic. Like, we'll see if it's better, but I don't know how much better it is. I mean, the only way to go is up from last season because the defense was trash last season. Like, they gave up so many explosive plays. It led the league, whether it was a run or a pass, they were giving it up. So I think they'll be better than last season, but are they better than 2022? I wouldn't go that far.
DJ Reader was a terrorist in 2022. Like, I don't think enough people understood that. I remember I was doing the film breakdown, and people were like, "Why couldn't Nick Chubb get the run game going?" Like, because DJ Reader said no.
That's what we would always tell people. Like, it would be like Derrick Henry, it would be like Nick Chubb. I would be like, look, I know it doesn't seem like one person being gone should be that drastic of a difference, but that's just how good he is. You know, Detroit got a good one. He is, like you said, he is a terrorist, bro. He can completely abolish the run game just by itself.
Because he can get off of a double team and then penetrate. And I think of the run game like it's dominoes for the offensive line, right? Like, for a run play to work, this guy needs to get here right when this guy gets here. And then that guy gets here, and then you seal off, and it works out.
Yeah.
But if DJ Reader just blows up the guard in the center, all of a sudden, the tackle pulls, and he's like, where am I supposed to be? Right? And then the play's dead. Right? Yeah. If DJ Reader might not make the tackle, somebody else might make the tackle, but DJ Reader destroyed the play because all of a sudden, 2 seconds into the play, you're on your third contingency plan on trying to make it work, and it ain't going to happen, right? I saw him do that to the Browns, like, play after play. I remember just looking at him like, if you want to know why this run play didn't work, find DJ Reader. I promise you something happened. Like, it was like that every play. So now I wanted him on the Browns. I'm kind of hurt. He went to Detroit, so at least he ain't in the conference anymore. But yeah. Let me tell you something. I wanted that next to Miles. Let me tell you. But one of the biggest complaints I've heard from Bengal fans about how the Bengals have constructed their roster and about the Bengals division record is that they don't feel like the team is built to beat other AFC North teams. And while you guys have won the division, it hasn't been with like a crazy division record, right? Like, I think both the times y'all won, I remember because like both the times we was like, man, they might not win the division. They already lost 3 games in division. And then y'all just won more games than everybody else. But do you feel like they've done things to kind of match up better with their AFC North teams, or are you in the state of mind where like, hey, we've won the division 2 times. It's not optimal, but it's doable.
Yeah. I would say that as it stands now, no. I mean, you look at what the division is on. Like, obviously, you guys are going to be changing from a running team to more passing, but obviously you have the Browns. You guys are still going to be able to run the ball effectively with Nick Chubb. We know even though the Ravens have this new attack, they're still going to run the ball. and now they have Derrick Henry. So you would think, hey, Derrick Henry's in the division now. This is the Ravens. How are you going to stop that read option? You might want to bring back DJ Reader. They decided not to. And then you talk about Arthur Smith going over to the Steelers, which we know he likes to run the ball because we saw what he did in Atlanta. And you do have Najee Harris there. And we know that Tomlin wants to run the ball. I mean, he just traded for Justin Fields, who's another guy that can help in that run game. And when I look at it from a defensive perspective, no, because a lot of teams in this division run the ball. From a passing perspective, I'll say it again. Yeah, sure. If you're talking about Geno Stone, if you're talking about Sheldon Rankins trying to get that rush up the middle, can you take advantage of certain AFC North teams like the Ravens or something like that? Like, sure, I think that you can. But to me, it's not like how it was in 2020. In 2020, when they built this defense with DJ Reader, with Von Bell, with Cheeto, and they went out and they got these corners that can tackle, a lot of people looked at it as that they were trying to build a team that could beat the Ravens, that could stop Lamar Jackson in space. And in essence, they have done that. Like Miles Murphy is a guy that's athletic enough to get out in space with LJ, but it hasn't really lined up well against the other teams, primarily the Browns. They haven't been able to do anything like that. Now, I will say offensively, I think them getting Trent Brown and adding two big tackles is definitely for Myles Garrett and definitely for TJ Watt for sure. I think from that aspect of it, they have to. They have to. And I think like offensively, it has, I mean, Zach Taylor's an offensive guy. So it seems like more of the priority of competing with the North has been put on that. They told us last season that they kind of lost perspective of the North, which is crazy because you always have to beat your division first. And I think they got so caught up on trying to beat the Chiefs and getting back to them that they put their complete focus on that. And you got to remember, the North is the best division in football, and all of these teams got better. So I think that they got caught slipping with that. But I think until I see after the draft, I'll have to say that they've adjusted to the North, because right now on defense, they really haven't. On offense, they have, but on defense, they haven't.
Here's the crazy thing about the AFC North that no other division really has. All four teams have been running the same core group of superstars pretty much since 2020.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if for 4 years, if you're a Bengals fan, you've been talking about Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb when you play the Browns. For 4 years, if you're a Bengals fan, you've been talking about Lamar Jackson. It's stopping the Ravens, right? For 4 years as a Bengals fan, you've been talking about TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. Right. And it's like that for literally every team. We've been talking about Joe Burrow since 2020, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, and everybody else that I've mentioned. And I don't think any other division has that level of familiarity. And I want to stress people how insane, like, if people wonder, oh, why did the Ravens change out their coordinators all of a sudden? Why are the Browns doing the same thing? That's why. Because everybody is so, like, it usually only takes like 2 years to be really familiar with somebody in division, because that's 4 games, sometimes 5, sometimes 6, because multiple AFC North teams every year, almost 3 every year, make the playoffs. So you're bound to get a rematch in there eventually. And then you look at this division and you're like, damn, man, the Browns have had that same core for a while. The Bengals that had that same core for a while. I wonder what it's like. Like, there have been times where the AFC North has had these big rivalries, right? It's like the Bengals and the Steelers, or it's the Steelers and the Ravens. But for all 4 teams to be this familiar with each other, it's just another brand of football that I don't think people understand. Like, they don't like each other after a while. Like, there's some respect that you build up, but you ever hear these podcasts, like Marlon Humphrey has one, and he's like, who's the hardest tackle? Nick Chubb. Like without it, because like he's gone up against them for 4 years, and it's a crazy thing to have that be 4 teams deep in this in this league, because like what you look at the AFC South, they're not running back the same core, the same coaches for the last 4 years. The AFC West definitely not doing that with what the Broncos have been. The AFC South, same deal. You could point, I think every team in the AFC South done switched up since 2020, and every other even the NFC West done had a lot of switch ups in there between the Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. this division has been really good, really talented, and had really talented cores on all 4 teams for 4 going on 5 football seasons. One, if you're a football fan, count your blessings. That don't happen every day. Okay? Like that rivalry football we see when the Bengals and the Browns play, that is real. Like, you think Joe Burrow is not actually sick of the Browns? Like, or, when you see TJ Watt doing this celebration against the Browns, like, they actually sick of this, dog. Like, is that something when you see new players sign with the Bengals or just new players sign into this division that you see them have an adjustment period with, like, from your perspective? Because I know from mine, it's fascinating because, like, it happened big time with Deshaun, where I think it wasn't until this year that he realized what this shit was.
Yeah, I think you definitely see it. Like, and I think that's one of the reasons that if you're going to recruit somebody, you might want to recruit them from the North, because certain guys that come from other divisions, they're just not ready.
You noticed that this year, right? Everybody is switching from North team to North team, right? Pat Queen comes from Ravens to Pittsburgh. Geno Stone, switches teams in the North. It's like they're just like, hey man, I don't know if I want to bring an outsider to this whole thing, because it's just
somebody from like the AFC West as a linebacker into the AFC North. That's just AFC South. Like, nah, we just built different over here in the North. Like, it's just different. So, and I think you're right. And I think they always, whenever they're interviewing people that are new, they're always like, yeah, they told us it's like Steelers week, or it's Browns week, or it's Ravens week. We need an extra chin strap. And it's like, yeah, AFC North games are built different. And I think that there have been some guys that came from like the NFC North, they kind of tend to be a little bit tougher. Like Mike Daniels kind of had that attitude, but it's like people that are familiar with the NFL, like actual players that, especially the defensive ones, they already know about the AFC North. They be looking like, yeah, we know what time it is when we bring that energy. So he was actually really pivotal in that Ryan Finley game Monday night, where the Bengals beat and upset the Steelers in that game, because he just knew what time it was from afar. But not everybody is aware, though. Like, some people don't. And it's
remember when Trevor Lawrence got aware of what this division was?
Oh yeah.
Because when he played the Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Browns, like 4 out of 5 weeks, something crazy like that. Yeah. And by the time he got to Cleveland, he's like, I'm glad I don't play here.
Look, this is O-Block. This is O-Block. This is the O-Block of the NFL. You cannot just come here whenever. You can't come out here at daylight. Like, look, this is O-Block. This is the O-Block of the NFL. It's the AFC North.
Yeah, I think one of the things with Deshaun, that week 2 Monday Night Football game, right? Because he played a little bit in it when he came back from the suspension, but it was Baltimore without Lamar Jackson, right? Like, you weren't playing Baltimore in Baltimore with Lamar. They hyped up and they trying to win to get the 1 seed and shit. Like, they just trying to play these games when Tyler Huntley out there. Or it was like, Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, but it's the last game of the year. None of the teams making the playoffs. It wasn't a real introduction. Week 2, I seen that man play in a national championship game in a heated rivalry versus Alabama. Mm-hmm. He never looked more shook in his life than he looked in the 3rd and 4th quarter of that Pittsburgh game, because he was like, this is different. Like, I've never seen him on the field, at least, try to fight somebody. He tried to fight somebody. I was like, oh, he don't know what this is yet. Like, I think he was figuring it out right there. Like, this is different. And then you hear him talking this podcast. He's like, yeah, no. I didn't realize it, but no, I actually hate Pittsburgh. Like, it's crazy. Like, no, it's different. Like, they know each other so well. Jamar Chase and Denzel Ward been talking shit back and forth for a college term. Okay. They are sick of each other. Right. Think about this. They've played each other 4 times in the NFL, or like 3 times in the NFL. That is 1 college football career now, but they used to be 2 college football careers before they had like the COVID rules. 6 times, or if you're T. Higgins, 8 times you've gone up against, Denzel Ward in this Browns team, and it's the same team, and it's not like you get a breather like when the Browns are bad. It's like, all right, we get the Browns. Nah, none of these teams, even the team that stinks, don't stink.
They'll beat you.
Yeah. Like, when you're pointing at the last place team and you're saying, was it the Steelers? No, it was the Bengals this year. But either way, when you're looking at the last place team and either that last place team has Myles Garrett, or that last place team is coached by Mike Tomlin, or that last place team has gone to 2 back-to-back conference championship games, or that last team has a 2-time NFL MVP. It's insane. That is insane in this division. And they've played each other enough to where they legitimately hate each other. This is rare to have this much continuity in the modern NFL. And I just hope people appreciate it because, I mean, this is we talk about the NBA not having no more. Why don't we have rivalries and all this stuff, right? Or we don't do it like that. Like, nah, the North, they still do that. Like,
still do it in the North, for sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see. And every year, whenever some other division comes here, their fans always like talk garbage about how the North's overrated. It's never like that at the end of that run, right? I like, hey, 49er fans, right?
49ers,
they got real quiet.
The Jets that one year, like okay. All right.
Because 49er fans, they beat the Steelers and they thought it was going to be sweet in the North. And then they lost to PJ Walker. And it didn't get any better after that. They got beat down by the Bengals, and they got towed up at home by the Ravens. It was like, I don't want. And that's the team that got out the NFC.
Yep.
That's nuts.
That's the ball.
That's nuts. Almost won it.
Yeah.
Like, overtime rules. Almost won it. The North ran through them like nothing. PJ Walker and a couple blowouts. That's what we did to them. That's a different level. And I wonder if that's something that hurts these teams in the playoffs because, like, how much of that can you actually take in a season? But it's a fascinating conversation to have. Overall, where do you feel like the Bengals are? I'll give you like a little bit of a scale.
Mm-hmm.
There's rebuilding, which I don't think you guys are anywhere close to. Mm-hmm. Then there is like legit, we can win a championship this year. Like, not if everything goes right. Like, we could win it this year. Kind of like we're that good at this end of the spectrum. Then you have this part of the spectrum that's like, remember like them Aaron Rodgers teams from like 2012 to like 2018? Mm-hmm. Where you're like, hey, man, if something goes right, it could happen. But we kind of just got to wait it out and see what it goes like. Like, yeah. Or are you in the, like, where do you feel like you are given that spectrum?
Man, the fact that they've lost so many players, and I go back and look at that 2021 team that made the Super Bowl, and rightfully so, the offensive line is gone because that was the weakest part. But then when you look at some of the skill positions, no more Joe Mixon, no Tyler Boyd. On defense, basically the whole secondary is gone. Only thing left is really the linebackers outside of Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. It's like, man, I said this earlier. I almost thought that it was like a rebuild, but I was like, maybe it's a retool. But I don't know if they're good enough right now, just on paper, to win a championship. So I think I would probably put them in that Aaron Rodgers Packers kind of mode. It's like, sure, they can, but one of the things for the Bengals I always felt like was the weapons that they had. And I feel like people kind of got tired, and I feel like a lot of our fans got tired of the narrative that Joe Burrow has to have weapons. And so they've tried to like double down on this. Well, maybe we can do it without T. Higgins. And to me, I'm like, that's just stupid, because why would you make something harder for yourself than easier? So for me, I think as it stands now, them losing some of the key players, the T. Higgins situation, a lot of people keep downplaying Tyler Boyd. They still haven't replaced him yet. I think that they're in that Packers kind of mode right now. Like if things go right and they do end up winning, sure. But I'm just not as confident as I have been in the past with some of these rosters that I've seen. And then a lot of the players that got you there, the DJ Readers of the world, the Cheetos. You do have Von Bell back now, but the Jesse Bates guys that were there aren't there anymore. And I question, where is this leadership going to come from? Like when you're getting rid of a lot of the vocal guys in the locker room, got a lot of the guys that know what it takes to get there, what are going to be the repercussions of that? So for me, I put us right now in that Packers range. The only way I see it changing is just if they knock this draft out the park and do something like that. But right now, I would say they deserve to be like seventh out of like the top 10 of Super Bowl odds right now. Like I wouldn't expect them to be in the top 5 or the top 3.
Kind of like a soft reload where you're like, all right, well, we probably need to reshuffle some of these cards. What's up with Tyler Boyd right now? Like, we're free agency for him.
So, I mean, I've heard some things about Tyler Boyd. I think what it is he's kind of – so the one thing I'll say about Tyler Boyd is he's a team guy. Doesn't have a problem with sacrificing. If he does, you're not going to hear him say much. He sacrificed a lot playing with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like there were times where this guy only got 3 targets a game. Us as Bengals fans know that he's way better than that. Like he could get 5, 6, 7 targets. So I think people are probably looking at it and saying, hey, this guy's production cut in half as soon as, Jamar Chase showed up. Is he really still that guy? And so I think given the circumstances with this draft class, the wide receiver position, possibly the asking price, because I know since he has kind of went down in production, I did hear that he does want more money. Like I heard at one point he was thinking about holding out last season before the season and then just decided no point in doing that. Let me just be a team guy, show up, not make much of an issue. But I think he thinks that he was underpaid because the market reset itself so crazy when he was still under his current contract. So it could be a situation where he's like, you know what, if they're trying to offer me the Juju deal, like in Kansas City, where you want me to take $6 million or something for a year, I'm not doing that because I feel like I'm worth more than that. So I could see that being potentially an issue with him. Like if the Steelers don't want to give him that much money, I could see that being kind of a snag of the deal. And then from another team's perspective, they don't know Tyler Boyd, so they don't know like the circumstances and what was going on. They're just looking at it as, hey, this is a guy that's 28. He was the third option last year. Really only had, I think, about 500-600 yards receiving the last 2 seasons. I don't know. So I think that's what's going on with the Tyler Boyd situation. But I think if anybody gets him, he's going to be a solid receiver to have. He could be a number 2. He could be a guy that's dependable. So I think that's what's going on. I'm hoping that his market dries out so much that he just comes back to Cincinnati. But remains to be seen. But I think that's what the situation is. But if I had to bet on it, I think he's going to Pittsburgh. Like he's from the area. He's from a small area there around Pittsburgh. He grew up a Steelers fan. It just makes too much sense for him not to be a Steeler.
And you can't never go back. You can't never go back to the place you asked for a raise and not get that raise. Like once you ask for that raise, you either got to get it or you got to just go somewhere else and figure out your situation and then try to get it that next time. Because it's just, you never see anybody make that move where it's like, damn, well, I couldn't get it. Let me come back for less. It's always, I think it happened with Jarvis Landry where the Browns wanted to sign him for less, but he was like, I'll take that same money in like New Orleans, just go back home and try to figure it out from there. But interesting talk about the Bengals, man. Anything you want to say before we head out?
Nah, man, appreciate you for having me on. And definitely you guys keep watching this content. It's fire. Q does his thing. Always appreciative of him bringing me on. If you're looking for anything that I have going on, you can check out the Cincinnati podcast. I'm also on Twitter at New Stripe City. I do have some content coming pretty soon, at least NFL draft content. If you're cool with watching all 22 and just college reviews of certain players, I plan on releasing some of those next week with Cut the Tape on. So look out for that. But as always, bro, it's a pleasure being on and rocking with you for sure.
Definitely, man. And make sure you check us out on AFC North Talk as well, where we get that fair and full perspective on all 4 of the teams. And we hit them Kenny Pickett jokes. By the way, Pittsburgh fans, man, remember how mad they was at me? Remember how outraged them Steelers fans were when I had the audacity to let them know that I don't even think this gonna be the Andy Dalton experience, right? They were like, oh, what do you mean? Quincy doesn't know what he's talking about. They got mad at me again about Russ.
Oh yeah, it's coming. That Russ they don't realize it yet.
They aggregated me over that. I'm like, oh, it's like that? It's like that? That's crazy. They don't ever aggregate me when I'm right.
It's that Pittsburgh Steelers mind frame, like, oh, we can win with Duck Hodges, so they're gonna overrate these mid guys that come in there to play quarterback. But the issue is, yeah, you can win games and all of that, but you're not winning no Super Bowls. Like that Sixburg, that stairway to 7, that stairway to 7 that has completely fell apart.
Hey, we'll let them figure it out on their own time. Like, we done tried to tell them, Ace. We done tried to tell them, hey, you are doing the things that land you here, right? Like, I feel like a man who got out of jail trying to tell these young boys how not to get to jail, and they just being stupid. I'm like, you know what? Go to jail. Go to jail. Okay. We've been telling them, hey, bro, you don't want to draft no quarterback in the 20s. Like, that's always a bad idea. Name me the last quarterback drafted in the 20s that was worth anything. Like, you don't ever. It's a bad idea.
It's Tomlin. You don't want to do that. Like,
Oh yeah. Hey man, keep signing veterans to hold over the quarterback gap. That's what does it. You know, hey. Keep winning 6 to 8 games. I remember when the Browns could have had Andrew Luck, but we wanted to win 6 games. So we got Trent Richardson. Hey, it's a cold world. It's a cold world. You know how we got Myles Garrett? We sucked. Okay? As much as you can stink, and we finally got some joy out the draft.
Right.
That's what it took.
But hey, man.
Let them figure that out on their own time, man. They out here moving it around, trying to tell me about Russ, while also hyping up the dude that they think gonna take the job from Russ. And I'm like, how does this sound like a healthy situation?
It sounds like a disaster. And from what I've heard from like the Greg Cosales of the world, who I completely respect, apparently every NFL team turned on that Justin Fields tape, and it was like, yeah, nah, he ain't got it. He can't see stuff. It takes him too long, and they're like, yeah, they just feel like that's one of the reasons he went for the 5th round pick is NFL teams cut the tape on Justin Fields last year, and they were like, yeah, this is the same stuff we said about him when he came out. He still can't do it.
Hey, man, I'll say this because we can have a 30-minute conversation about them too, but I wasn't worried about Russ when the Browns played Russ last year. I wasn't worried about Justin Fields when the Browns played Justin Fields last year. I wasn't worried about Arthur Smith if the Browns had to play the Falcons. I don't think that collab is going to make me sweat. Okay? Like, then imagine Russ trying to hand the ball to Najee so they can have a who runs slower contest. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace. Brother's going to be having a reverse race.
For sure.